So thank you for your participation and for all the support that I get, we get, the community gets, this teaching gets from you by your participation and by your support, not only participation, but also financial support. This particular activity called a Buddhist monastery does not generate a product or service. People donate, appreciate what's being done, appreciate the teachings and help us, and appreciate that very much. If you can do that, please continue. If you can't, don't stop attending or participating by any means. That's the most important thing. This morning, the topic is a true teacher. So there's lots of ways perhaps to talk about that or define it. So I'm going to offer you my understanding of it. And that is, well, first of all, if you're teaching wood shop in high school, a true teacher there would be someone who knows they know the tools and they know the safety measures and they know about how to actually teach someone how to do that, how to make things out of wood and so on. Simple idea. And you could extend that in all the other relative directions. And in some areas, the true teacher might be operating in the area of the spiritual path, but not completely. They might still be trying to teach it out of relative knowledge. Not incorrect, just not complete. Not incorrect, just go so far. We're going to live forever, then relative truth will work fine. But we're not. This is all coming apart. Everything that you think, everything you are, everything that shows up, everything that is compounded, everything that manifests is your worst thoughts, your worst feelings, your most wonderful feelings are coming apart and going away. Your reputation, your lack of a reputation, everything disintegrates. Total impermanence. It's one of the three marks of existence that the Buddha taught. Nothing lasts. All compounded things will vanish. Simply put, everything is in a state of dissatisfaction. The life is suffering. Everything is not particularly easy. And it's because there are nerve endings everywhere. And every one of the sense fields is sensitive. Sense of touch, sensitive to pleasure, feathers and things like that. Sensitive to hidden razor blades. Ouch. So the true teacher on the spiritual path is no longer a personality. The personality might still be there, and it might be outlandish, it might be outrageous, it might be cranky, it could be any number of things. And if you're judging the teacher by how he or she or they are acting, then you're probably not a student. You should go do something else. And I sometimes even shout that at you because I'd like to have less students. Be a lot easier. The ones I have are difficult. You notice I'm not laughing. That's because I'm difficult. Those of you who are not students of mine, notice I'm a fairly easygoing person. But if you get close to this teacher, it might not be so easy for you, because if I, meaning this guy, if I see what your neurosis is, and you've given me permission to be your teacher, I'm going to point that out to you. It might take me a year, 2 years, 3 years, 8 years. I might never get to that. I might be continually watching you and seeing the way you continually weave a net of belief, disbelief, and ignorance, looking for an opening where you might be able to receive this teaching. In other words, actually be a student, not just go through the motions of being a student. Oh, yes, teacher. Yes, please be my teacher. Show me my true nature. Don't bullshit me. I tried to bullshit Coben. He wasn't having it. He was my second teacher. Took me 10 years to realize what he was pointing at. He was dead before I could be grateful to him. I was never able to tell him that. So the true teacher is, it's not that they don't have a personality. It's just that what is coming through that, the consciousness, Buddha nature, the teaching of the Buddha's Dharma, the lineage, the Zen lineage, the Chan lineage, the Kagyu lineage, the Nyingma, the Shambhala lineage, all the lineages. In fact, and in fiction, any lineage that is coming out of the ultimate truth, understanding of the ultimate truth, which has no position, which has no occurrence, which has no past, which has no future, which has no present. The relative polarity, if it is there at all, is just seen to be an illusion, even if it's solid. Even if it's a solid object making a noise. That's why we believe it. It's because we pinch ourselves. We'll see. Am I dreaming? Yes. The pinching, the feeling of being pinched is a dream. Well, that doesn't work. Only in the movies. So I'm going to talk a little bit more, but I would really like is to come at this person with as strong questions as you can. So together you can show me what you already know, and you can show me what you think you know. And with some permission, just will show up in the question. I can come back and respond to that, hopefully in a creative way that may help you get a little bit closer to the truth before you pass back into the elements, into the earth, air, water, fire, from which you arose. So you can see what this is. Your teacher doesn't have a plan doesn't look at you and watch your sanity or your insanity, your neurosis, or your magnificent understanding of everything, and make any kind of determination or judgment. They don't have to take a position on anything. If they did, they couldn't teach. They might as well be teaching woodshop. It's actually beyond that. I'm not saying there are very, very high levels of relative truth that show up as the spiritual path. Of course, there are people who, I'm not going to name them, but people that I've listened to a little bit to see where they're teaching at, and they're doing a very good job of doing that. They're using a very clear conceptual understanding of relative truth, but they're still attached to the relativity, the fixation, the attachment is still there. And if there's an attachment, then there's an other. There's an underlying belief in duality, in me and those guys, or me and that, or for that matter, me and the floor, or me and birds in the trees, the otherness, so convincing. And it reifies, establishes and fuels the belief that you are here separate from everything else over there. And then when you die, then then other beliefs will take over, that you're possibly going to heaven, or if you believe that there's some kind of ongoing thing called consciousness after the body passes into non-existence. Maybe. There's no guarantee of anything. If anyone tells you what's going to happen, then that's okay. You can listen to it. But I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't disbelieve it. And I wouldn't reject it. Don't do anything with it. If you can do those three, if you can just see that you're not taking any position on anything, then you're not separate from anything that appears to occur in the illusion, nor are you the same as that. It's non-dual. Advaita is the fancy word for it. You can't think your way into it. You can't figure this out. I think if you could figure it out, I might have had some success 30, 40, 50 years ago when I was working so hard at it. Isan.
Peace on bowing. One of the ways we can say the second vow is, I vow to live in enlightenment.
Yes.
What, for a householder, what does it mean to live in enlightenment?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Live in enlightenment. Don't accept it. Don't reject it. Don't ignore it. Whatever happens, you have no idea what's happening. You might be in the middle of buttering a slice of bread. No idea what this is. No idea. Don't accept it. Don't reject it. Don't ignore it. Live in enlightenment. Live in a completely open dimension, which is available to you, even though you're still in an embodied form. It just might take a lot of time of sitting down and watching the crazy mind come and go, grasp and reject and shut down and tell stories and believe stories and disbelieve that story and try to find proof. This is not about evidence. Spiritual path is not, well, you believe in God or you believe in this or believe this. The positionality is what is so difficult. So living in enlightenment means whatever shows up. It's just the name of my name, my Dharma name, Sokuzan means Soku means as it is, just this. Zan means mountain. It just means a big, stubborn old person. Sokuzan. Just a way of just have to have some kind of a name. So let's have that one. So living there might take me a lot of time noticing, being aware. Listen to this closely, please. We have a few minutes left. Noticing how you can continually abandon what arises for what you think about it. Abandon what arises either in front of you or in your mind. Or something else distracting yourself. Ignorance. Or abandon what arises as it is by fighting with it or judging it or poking holes in it or sending out weapons. Do nothing with it. If you do anything at all, the instruction here is to receive. This is what your sense fields are. You just receive. We smell, we taste, we touch, we feel, we think. You think, you don't. Thinking thinks. There's no one there. There's no thinker. You don't have to get rid of thinking. You do not have to get rid of an ego. You don't have to get rid of anything. If you try to get rid of something, this is trying to establish some kind of a better kind of an improvement project where you've gotten rid of your negativity. Just because in Atisha 7 Points of Mind Training, it talks about working on the greatest defilements first. This doesn't mean you need to get rid of the defilements. This is a misunderstanding. It's called spiritual materialism. My teacher wrote about it, talked about it extensively, using spiritual techniques to improve rather than to see what this is directly with your own direct perception. You can do this. It will not be an experience. It will not happen as an occurrence. It won't happen to you. So if you're looking for some event or some occurrence, this is the rotation of the spiritual path that is called spiritual materialism. It's like winning and losing and failing and succeeding and failing and getting better and getting worse. It's just you might as well be in wood shop. And nothing wrong with wood shop. Nothing wrong with all the relative situations. They're powerful. They're necessary. Every single one needs to be here in a society of billions of people. It would be nice if people would appreciate what that is rather than constantly go to war and take the very ability of people to make things and build Bradley fighting vehicles and military weaponry and so on. But it's not the problem with the building. It's the avalanche of dependent origination that started centuries ago. Even that's a light description of it. It's bigger than that, but you don't have to stop the avalanche. I'm not saying you couldn't spend your time picketing and voting and all that. Probably should. I intend to vote. I will participate in society as it presents itself, but not necessarily try and go in and change the society itself without first looking at the nature of the mind that created the society. Go to the root of it rather than try to trim off the dead leaves or whatever they are. Go to the root. The root is in the darkness. And that's where you have to go. Root isn't out here where the leaves and branches are. Can't change those. Mori-san.
Not at this time. Thank you for that very complete answer.
Sanji, what is other?
It's the illusion that there's something at the end of all the senses that is something other than that which is perceiving what is at the end of the senses. In other words, what is being perceived, consciousness, and that which is perceiving, consciousness, are two different things. So the traditional teaching is said long before we got here, everything is empty of other. In other words, the otherness that appears as over here, it's empty of that. It's empty of that. The perceiver of that, it's empty of a perceiver and it's empty of other. But empty of other is just a way of talking about it. Empty of self, empty of other. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It means that when you see what it is, you see that the perceiver, the subject and the object are not two different things. You can't have one without the other. That's just the description of it. The actual experience of that, the experience comes apart, but the ego mind looks for an experience because it's evidence of proof of I see this, or proof of I don't see this, because it's looking for some kind of congratulatory thing happening, finally getting somewhere, finally understanding, and finally becoming more peaceful. It's not that you won't, but that's kind of a liner notes to the whole thing. That's margin notes. The actual text is it has no words. The experience is without an experiencer, and it's without an experience. It is fundamentally empty of other, empty of self. More? There.
It's very bad. I have chronic nerve pain, and there's little to be, it can't be fixed necessarily. There are things that calm it and help it, and I
Yes.
do all the things.
You have nerve. Speak up a little bit. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So
You have nerve pain.
yeah,
And
and I wonder if sometimes I get, I rather than be with the pain, sometimes the resentment show comes up, or the it's my fault show comes
Yes.
up, like blaming myself.
I follow you. What's your question? I follow you.
I would like to get better at not letting that have a ripple effect on my husband or people around me, and still,
Yeah. Yeah.
keep my sanity.
I understand what's your question. I could guess at it. Direct question, and I'll be direct. Yes.
I don't know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So it's always about awareness. It's never about fixing. And whatever shows up, as I said, say many times, whatever shows up in your mind stream has a right to be there. It's not, it's like it's validated. You've been terrible, so you're going to be tortured. No, it's more complicated than that. It's without personhood. The causes and conditions are is a labyrinth of the illusion of otherness that keeps hounding us and teasing us into trying to fight with this or agree with that, or the politics of experience are just a mess. The only thing I know of, and I'm not saying there are 1,500 other ways, the only way I know of is to slow everything down, hold still, and watch the craziness of the mind. You might have to watch that for weeks, months, years before you eventually see that which is observing is not a self. That which is being observed is not an other. That it is fundamentally unreal. It just takes a lot of time, and there's not many people that are ready to do that. I'm such a failure at everything else. I thought, well, maybe I can do that. I am. mean, it's the things I tried to do, I failed at, which brought me to the spiritual path, which is all about failure.
Most of going. It seems like if people care about each other, even if we aren't particularly outflowing or blaming others, pain and negativity can still. Those who care about us are going to feel that pain or that negativity that we're experiencing. Is there a way to work with that so that our suffering isn't causing others suffering?
Well, it's a good question. So the idea is to put others before yourself. Don't be concerned with your suffering. I mean, I sometimes say it very bluntly, and I want questions around this. If you have, this would be a very good place, especially for those who are meditating a lot, to explore. If you see what this is, you will not give a shit how you feel. Because if you care about how you feel, then you're still stuck on a self that needs to do better, that has somehow been put upon or been abused, and not that some of that relative stuff isn't true, that you could take it to court. It's just that's circular. It goes in circles. And the feeling we're getting better, the feeling at least we're not hurting anybody. Well, at least it's just so convincing. And so don't be concerned with that. Put others before yourself. And the next time you're in an interaction with someone else and you feel like they're doing this or doing that, you feel like they've triggered your negativity, something rather than to jump on that and show that at them or blame them, you could just stop. That there's a word in that in Buddhism called renunciation, and it's not about controlling. It's just that you're just done with it. You're just done with blaming others. Even if they did it, even if they came up and whacked you one in the head. I don't know how, I mean, obviously that might not be a very good example, but it's like that. Someone has done this, and this, and you start to bristle. Feel the bristling. Don't stop the emotions that come and go in the mind stream. But don't leave what happens in the mind stream or the sensitivity of the nerve endings, any of them, all 6 of them, including the mind, for downloading it or outflowing on others. Even if you have proof, you have pictures of what they said, did, and so on like that. That doesn't matter. If you use that, you just joined in with the rest of the phantasmagoria of the Coney Island of the mind. It's crazy. It's entertaining. It's distracting. It's crazy. You don't have to join that. You don't have to do that. You don't have much to say so over anything. Free will is a misunderstanding. But you could actually just slow down, watch what moves in the mind, and don't join. Ultimate liberation for someone will not be particularly experiential at all. It will not be having an experience. Go ahead.
Zuko bowing. Seems like there can be situations where there isn't a whole lot of blame to be ascribed. Maybe it's just pain or even watching you coughing and clearly suffering when you were feeling worse. That suffering still impacts those around you.
Okay.
Is there a way to work with that to not, yeah.
You do not have control over that. That's just dependent origination. We're not trying to say that you get to act in a different way where you're no longer harming anybody. But what's happening, there's a very, very sneaky area where self-centeredness is getting a credential from that. Do you see it?
Zuko bowing from the suffering spreading or from trying not to?
And do anything with it. Think you have any say-so, any control over anything. And I'm not going to go into some kind of existential discussion of free will. That's the whole concept of free will is based on a whole lot of misunderstandings. But it's the idea of trying not to do that, trying not to harm others and so on. It's not that you couldn't do that, But if you make some kind of an agenda about it and start keeping score about who's harming who and how much you've been successful at not harming others. If you're on screen and you have your microphone off, please turn it off. Thank you. Unless you have a question. Yes, sir.
Sanji, is the belief of yourself as an other what generates the suffering?
It's the whole thing, just the polarity of it. Belief that you're somebody, belief in a solid self that is happy, sad, getting better, getting worse. And aligned with this body. It's not that there isn't a body here, with eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, a lifespan of 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it may be. It just seems so vivid and real. We have a memory, and we can daydream about the future, what's going to happen next. So we create this whole we're like we're novelists. We're writing stories about ourselves all the time, telling stories, overlapping stories, telling stories on top of stories on top of stories. The minute you start talking to your own thought patterns, I sometimes use the example of they're like goldfish. Stop talking to goldfish. It's like you don't talk to your thoughts. They're like they have their own. They rise, they hang around for a while, and they go away. Their thoughts, they have no past or future. But we invent one in order to give us the illusion that we're somebody going somewhere and have some kind of say so. You have no say so, not because there isn't say so. It's just that there's no one there. That's the primary illusion. The primary misunderstanding or mistaken identity is that there's a solid being. Just because there's an organism here, you are actually much greater. Your true nature is way beyond this simple life and death organism that's coming and going. If you realize it, you won't be concerned with what happens next. Why? There is no next. That's an illusion. There's just this, and even that is suspect. It's a very temporary illusion, yes. Make it strong and make it direct. Your question, go right to what you want to know. Don't get me into one of your side tracks. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, I don't feel confident I can do that.
Well, then do whatever you can.
Sokuzan, with my first question, you said we have a little bit of say so, and my paraphrase would be not outflow. Is there a way to work with that teaching that isn't about control or getting a credential for not outflowing?
So as much as we can, sit down, face the wall, train your mind, spend a lot of time just sharpening the blade of awareness rather than chopping vegetables with the awareness. In other words, rather than thinking, processing, analyzing. Some people are extremely good at this, and they get the feeling of just knowing. Relative knowing is very powerful. There are famous people who are so good with discussion and debate and just moving things back and forth with concepts and ideas. Astonishing. Very fast thinkers. And getting a kind of credential every time they do that. They'll even get a credential out of the failure of that, because then they'll know, just it gives them room to improve, or now they're learning something. So the only way I know of to address your question is to sit a lot, sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind, meditate, and then in your case, in the case of anyone here, just about study the Dharma, study the concepts that have been around for 20 years, 100 years, thousands of years, that where people have understood this and have brought it out of their understanding into the conceptual area. It can reinforce that area that the ego keeps making use of, the thinking process. And study the 30 verses of Asamandhu, which we study. I think we're still studying that, aren't we? Somewhat. We've been studying it for years. Just 30 verses. We go over it and we study it not only in English. We study 11 different translations of that out of the Sanskrit. And then we also, thanks to Chisho, who reads speak Sanskrit. We were able to have access to the actual language it was written I think in the 3rd century. Powerful conceptual direction about what is happening in the mind when you buy into a self, when you buy into an other, or when you reject a self or reject another, take any position on anything, anywhere. And we don't, most people, billions of people are operating as if this is real. And if there's a right and the wrong, success and a failure. And relatively, it's true. There is. That's why it's so incredibly powerful.
Bob, what was the name of that text?
It's the 30 verses of Vasubandhu. And you can get it from, I think it's probably on the website. I think there's 11, there are 11 translations of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're all available on the website. But there's one.
But you could, all you have to do is talk to someone Shisho or any number of people that are studying that together. And that's something I occasionally join. Powerful. It's there's a translation by Stefan Anaker called 7 Works of Vasubandhu, which has the 30 verses, the 20 verses, and several other areas where he goes into various aspects of the traditional Buddhist teaching, including the 5 skandhas. Ondo.
Ondo bowing. Will we recognize a true teacher? Bowing.
I don't know.
Is it important to recognize a true teacher?
It seems that way, but I don't know. When I say I don't know, I'm not trying to be. I don't know. I mean, we're here. If I'm a teacher, I only get that permission to do that from having a student. If you listen to what I say, and I say a lot, especially the last 15 years, I've been running my mouth constantly. But I spent 30 years not saying much at all, other than fighting with whatever partners I was with at the time. But then it just started to change, where now I'm teaching, and I don't think about this. I'm not planning what I'm going to teach. I don't think first and then come up with an idea. I don't have notes. Occasionally, I might have notes a little bit because there's 3 or 4 topics I want to make sure I don't miss. But will you recognize a true teacher? I think you recognize a true teacher here, not in your thought process. The thought process might be pretty disturbing to try to think about that. And when I'm saying disturbing, I just mean it might be more like just stay away from that situation. The ego will come in and make comments and protect you from going in that direction so that you get to continue to be an imaginary self with some rights and some regulations and some privileges and some abilities and some trajectory of where your life is going and how you're going to do this, that, or the other thing. It's not inappropriate. We're not trying to say everybody should be on a mountaintop somewhere and contemplating your navels. I say, you've heard me say, if you listen to me at all, you've heard me say, don't do anything unless you have to. If you don't have to meditate, go do something else. This is way too hard to do. You know that, don't you? On the other hand, if you're coming to me and you're a student of mine, and if you were to say, well, you said don't do anything unless I have to, then Sokuzan, that I'm going to quit, not meditate anymore. I might try to talk you out of it a little bit, but not very much. And so stay here, keep meditating, keep practicing. Just return to the wall, return to the teacher, return to the teaching, return to the community. Do that from now on the rest of your life. Is it easy? No, it's not easy at all. But if you say, well, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore, I have to leave. I had several students just leave. They don't even make an announcement. They just don't talk to me anymore. Is that wrong? No, they're doing the best they can with what they understand. They've not done anything wrong. I've had other students that just can't receive the way this person is teaching. Does that mean that, oh, I have this wonderful teaching, and the poor fool, they can't see how smart Sokuzan is. So they've gone, no, they're doing what they need to do. There's the right and wrong are just a misunderstanding, my friends, my dear friends, a misunderstanding. Do what you need to do. If you can listen to that one teaching, don't do anything unless you have to. your mind will begin to clear. It just might take a while. Yes, sir.
Sokuzan, are you able to talk about what it was in you that saw your true teachers, or what it is in us that recognizes that?
I have no idea. I just I don't know. All I know is when I met Trungpa in 1973, that it was choiceless for me. I didn't think, this guy seems like a pretty smart fellow. No, it was more like a big hit with a baseball bat. And I don't even play baseball. It was very painful. And it was very shocking. And something started to break apart, and I felt some relief. At the same time, I felt terrified. The ego, my self-centeredness is incredibly intense, and it's still there, hasn't gone anywhere because it's unreal. It doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to get rid of an ego. You see this unreal, then it might hang around and cause a fuss every now and then. But if you see it clearly, then it doesn't have any purchase on your life, other than occasionally it just seems it's almost like it's not almost, you don't decide that, but you just notice your ego starts to work in a certain area, because that's the only thing that will give you some kind of connection with what's happening in your living room or in your meditation hall. Or
Sokuzan, I'm wondering, with all the craziness we see in ourselves, and how is it possible that, or how do we talk about that experience of meeting someone who is different than all the spinning? I don't have a good direct question about it.
I understand. I don't know if there's a way to bring that into words. There's an area where it's quite, and teachers down through the centuries have tried to talk about the teacher-student connection as far as the spiritual path, not only in the Tibetan tradition, the Zen tradition, Chinese tradition, but even in the theistic areas, that kind of dynamic. It hasn't showed up so much in history, but it's also there when there's a teacher. As it says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But a teacher is not, if it's a true teacher who is teaching out of ultimate reality, which might sound a little fancy to you, but that's how it is.
Sokuzan, I'm wondering if it's connected with the term you use, not separate, and sense of someone who's looked at almost every single millimeter of their confusion, which isn't separate from the student's confusion, and yet I'm not sure where to go with that. I had something in there, but I'm losing it.
So what do you want to know? That's the best to clean it up. Just go with what you want to know rather than a description of what you want to know.
Sokuzan, it's kind of all over the place right now. I think I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sano,
Sano, go ahead.
is everyone a teacher?
So I would have to ask you. I could say yes in some way. If you're a student, then everyone is your teacher. But you may have to be introduced to everyone and to the world by a true teacher. You may have to run into a true teacher that can show you that you're not separate from anyone anywhere. And if this means that 24/7 you are on receive, you have all these incredible sense of smell, taste, touch, hearing, seeing, thinking, feeling, receive, produce nothing. If you have to produce something, then it'll come out of its own. It'll come out because it's necessary, dependently risen. So yes, everyone, if I'm hearing what you're saying, and if I'm tuning into what you're looking for there, I would say yes. And whatever anyone says, it doesn't mean they might not know that. They might be so wound up in their thought patterns about right and wrong, what they should be or what they shouldn't. But they might be functioning in such a way that if you're a student, then you could, if you're on receive, if you just receive, you have to receive without adding to it, analyzing it, have to receive without doing anything with it. Take it as it's a straight shot, just as it is, put no condiments on it, just eat it. Don't dress it up so it's a little bit more tasty. You know, if it's sour, sour. If it's smelly, smelly. Ondo.
Ondo bowing, does receive mean obey what the true teacher or completely follow?
No, don't obey anybody. Obeying is just a way of resurrecting or reinforcing or recreating or reestablishing or enforcing some kind of illusion that there's a separate one who can obey someone. Don't obey. The better O word there is observe. Just observe what's happening. Give it a long, slow glance. Look at the wall. When someone's talking to you, listen to their words. When there's whatever they're saying, listen to not only the texture of the words, listen to what the words mean. Not only what the words mean, listen to the tempo, listen to see if it's going up in tone or down in tone. Not because that's going to take you away from that into what it means. It might take you right into what it actually is. You can do this. It just might take the rest of your life. Don't obey anybody. Coben said once, get your own authority. But then if you get your own authority, what do you find out? There is no such thing as an authority. There's no central command post anywhere. That's done in order to manipulate people, mainly white people, white old men manipulating everybody else, rather than people actually treating others with respect and being kind, supporting them, looking at people who need help and putting them before yourself. That still happens. It happens in lots of places. Quite often it's people trying to get credentials doing that or trying to control people. But often it's people that are just kind. They're just kind. Some people are born into this world just being kind. And others are born being controlling and sometimes can turn into quite difficult situations where people are hurt. Yes, Ondo.
Ondo bowing. Does receive mean agreeing with everything the teacher says or does? Bowing.
No, thank you for the question. Don't agree with anything. You don't need to agree with anything. Whatever happens doesn't need your agreement. Don't agree. It's harder than this. Don't agree, don't disagree, and don't ignore. Certainly don't obey. Don't do anything. Now, if you have a teacher, you might want to consider what the teacher's saying. I'm not saying obey them, but the teacher's saying you should train your mind. Sit down, hold still, and watch your mind come and go. Watch what happens with it without accepting it, without rejecting it, without ignoring it, without agreeing with it, without disagreeing with it, without distracting yourself from it. This is the spiritual path as I understand it. I'm not saying there aren't maybe other ways of looking at this. Of course there are.
Son Hobart.
Yes, sir. Sano.
What is the helpful or, for want of a better word, wise way to disobey or disagree with the teacher, Son Hobart?
Well, it's very situational, like everything is. The teacher is saying, maybe there's some kind of a form that he or she or they are saying that they want you to do this in order to train your mind. You've agreed to be a student of theirs, so and so you're going to, insofar as you can, you try to align yourself with that, just giving the teacher the benefit of the doubt. They've been around a while longer. They maybe looked at the mind stream, their own and that of others for a while. there would be some kind of reason you even have a connection with them as a teacher. I would say don't have a teacher. We're looking for a teacher. Plenty of charlatans out there will sell you a bill of goods and get you to follow them and with make promises that only they know, only they have this true spiritual path. So as far as how to disagree, or you should just bring it to the teacher. You and I have talked about this a little bit. When you have something come up that you think is controversial around the teacher, you need to, since you're a student of mine, you need to bring it to me, not gossip with others about it. You know what I'm talking about? Bring it to me, and then I will, as your teacher, then we'll talk about it. You say, well, it looks to me like Sokuzan, you're doing this or this or this. That seems to be off the wall in some way. And we will talk about that. I've often said in this community, let's not have any gossiping here. But if you have something that's going on in the community, let's talk about it together. CCC, communicate, listen to others. 90-10, listen to others 90% of the time, talk the other 10. And in my case, of course, I'm sitting up here, I'm going to talk quite a bit. But most of the time in the Hojo, in the interview room, I listen, unless it's with Ji's on, in which case I tell him a bunch of stuff. Yes, Jishi.
Chongyam Trungpa said that devotion to the teacher in the Kagyu tradition is the unity. What is that unity? Bowing.
He's just referring to that it's not separate. Even though you feel separate, the feeling of separate, that's the illusion. But you're not separate from the teacher. The teacher knows that, and you don't know that yet. But you have some kind of inspiration just by reading those words. And I read those words half a century ago or whatever it was. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt over and over and over, even though he pretty much scared me. The unity is already the case. You don't have to create it or make it or something. Go ahead.
Does this unity happen when the student falls apart? Bowing.
When the ego mind, the conceptual mind, the thought process around the consolidation of ideas and beliefs and opinions and judgments, and when that starts to shatter and come apart, there can be a lot of fear until that process is complete. So it's necessary to have a connection with the teacher, so that you have some kind of reference point as you come apart. Otherwise, the ego will reassert itself and will find another way of solidifying its credentials, its identity, up to and including leaving the path and going in a different direction altogether. That sometimes happens.
Thank you.
So it seems that one of the things that Trungpa Rinpoche would say was, you need the teacher to introduce you to your world. And my way of talking about that is the negativity in the world is horrible. The negativity in somebody down the block, or somebody at the store, or somebody you meet in traffic, or possibly your relationship, just intense negativity of people who are just trying to be happy and don't know any other way to do it other than just be aggressive with you, download their intensity on you. And what I'm saying here is my understanding is the teacher may come and show you that negativity in person. So that teacher may be very, very negative with you, unreasonably negative with you. And that is an opportunity for you to fall at the feet of the teacher. I don't mean literally necessarily. If you have to prostrate or something, you can do that. But really realize that if it's a teaching person, then that everything has to be seen as a teaching, because the teacher is just a living manifestation of reality. There's not some fancy person. They're there. And if you bring your life to them as a student, then they're not making up ideas. Let's see, what's a good way to teach Jiuzan? Or what's a good way to teach Myoka? How should I really treat Mozuku? I don't think about anything. But if you bring whatever is happening, your neurosis, your understanding, and your lack of understanding, which are not separate from each other, in front of the teacher, then whatever the teacher does in relationship to you, including kicking you out of the hojo, is a teaching. It's not a judgment. There's no judgment happening. This is very difficult. Some people have a lot of difficulty. Some people have so much difficulty with this. In my case, where they actually left me because I think I'm too mean or too grouchy. Well, what am I going to do? Come back and say, well, they're not ready for my wonderful teaching. No, they're doing exactly what they need to do. They're doing exactly, not wrong. It's not incorrect. I'm doing the best I can. And people I'm referring to, I know they're doing the best that they can. And we did the best we could. But there's no failure there. No failure. It's not about success and failure. Difficult point to not only to say, but to understand that it's not about success. From the ultimate point of view, which is what is being seen by the teacher, nothing occurs. Everything is already completely awake, as it is. As it is. So we just have to stop covering it up. That's what the teaching is about, to stop covering up your true nature, your Buddha nature, your awakened nature. Yuhong.
Yuhong Baving, can you hear me?
No. Yes, I hear you fine.
My question is regarding communication with my partner who is not interested in this work and on this path. My difficulty is my prejudice that I often think of myself as more aware than him, which has been a difficulty and also a very hard obstacle for me to receive him. How can I put himself before me? Sorry.
Just take an interest in what he's interested in. Just ask you, what's your husband's name again?
Quay, Quay.
So just talk to Quay. When you talk to Quay, just ask him about what he's doing. Don't talk about your interest. Keep your interest to yourself. And if he is interested in what you're up to, make him drag it out of you. In other words, make him, when I say make him, you're not making him doing anything, but he will notice after time that you never mentioned your own practice, but you spend a lot of time meditating, but you're not mentioning it. So, or not, it doesn't matter. It's not about manipulating him. It's about meeting him where he's at. I'm sure is there something that he has a lot of interest in?
Yuhong Baoing, I'm not talking about his interest or my interest. That's not my business to interfere his own whatever interested or spirituality. My difficulty is regarding just a basic couple communication. Yes. I often think I'm more aware than him. Whatever he says, I often could be agree, disagree, but I often feel like my own prejudice has been my biggest obstacle for me to listen to him. So for this case, yes, it's hard for me to receive. I don't know how I can put others before myself.
Just the way you asked the question, I think you're doing fine. It's just not comfortable. There's nothing to correct, nothing to change. Continue to do what you're doing. Nothing lasts. So anything, but it tends to persist if you fool around with it and try to get some other outcome. So just and also don't maintain it. Don't push it away. Don't do anything with it. You're doing fine. If you need help in that area, come and talk to me again, and I'll say you're doing fine. You follow me a little bit?
I do.
What's happening is you're getting caught up in your own thought patterns and polarizing yourself with him. You're not as separated from him as you think. And to use the relative word that we often hear, is just relax a little bit in that area. Don't worry about it, but train your mind. Get your body to the wall. Sit down, hold still. Ask Quay to watch your two kids and take care of them. You need to go meditate for an hour. Just ask him that as a favor. So you can practice. For you to sit for an hour is important. You do not have to make progress. Big misunderstanding. Just continue. You're doing fine. You sound good, actually. That sounds good.
Thank you, Bowing.
Yes.
I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I feel like I can be humble with others except with him. Am I making a distinction? Just making a I cannot say the word. No, I try to. Am I making a difference? Try to distinguish him with others? Bowing.
Yes, but you're aware of it. So it's always about awareness, never about changing what you're doing, or about the awareness of it. You have a lot of awareness. So just stay with the awareness of it rather than some kind of right and wrong or something you shouldn't be doing. All that's doing is reifying and fueling that part of the consciousness that I refer to as the ego, or the seventh consciousness, the ego mind, the part of the mind that is paranoid, even though it's under the surface. It doesn't seem paranoid, but it is. And so all you have to do is just continue. Continue to sit. Oh, no.
Thank you, Bowing.
You're welcome.
Ondo Bowing. I wanted to go back to the idea of a teacher and
Yes.
with devotion, and you told Sanho to come to you with issues. There's a power differential between the teacher and the student.
Yes. What do you want to know?
What I want to know is, I guess, how do we work with that power differential? Bowing.
I still don't know what you want to know there, other than it's kind of obvious that I had two teachers, and I'm not going to go into all the chemistry and all the melodrama or anything around that, but it's just you're going to have, if you have a teacher, then there's going to be some kind of a polarity happening there where they seem to know or understand more than you do in some way. I'm not sure if that's the area you're asking about. You experience that with this person. So use that example rather than the one with Sanho.
Ondo Bowing. What's coming up for me is you're telling people to leave if they don't agree, or aren't able to receive, or don't like what they're hearing.
I don't know if I'm exactly saying that. I'm just saying don't do anything unless you have to. And if they're here and someone that's been here for a while and they've been trying and maybe they can't do this, I'm not going to go in and try to convince them they should stay no matter what. If they ask me, then I'm going to say, yes, you should stay. You should stay with it. Stay with it. Don't, as Trungpa Rinpoche once said, and quoting traditional teachings, I think he said, better not to even begin this path. But once you begin, better to finish it. Once you start it, you start to get into areas that you just did not expect you'd have to deal with, because you're actually talking about the very nature, the very structure of confusion, and the very structure of that part of consciousness that thinks there is a real being here. You actually begin to see that this is unreal, and yet you're still here. You still have hands, you still have eyes, but who you actually are goes way beyond this experience of taking a shower, brushing your teeth. It's extensive. It extends and extends and extends. This was discussed in the Padmasambhava discussion we had recently about this expansiveness. It's astonishing. It's difficult to point that out without having some kind of images, but it's everywhere. You are not, there's no location. Location is something that's invented in order to control or give the illusion of control. And so the teacher is here to introduce you to that vast, unending display. We call it Vipassana, the panoramic awareness. Mahavipassana, the great panoramic awareness, which has no center and has no fringe. The relative descriptions fall apart. More?
Ondo bowing. So when in our relationship to the teacher, it can look like almost like obeying or excessive devotion if we're receiving everything the teacher is giving us, even though there's a lot of negativity or a lot of controversy. Right? How do we deal with that, bowing?
I think it's so individual. And when I'm saying people should leave, I don't want anybody to leave. I'm just saying, I know this is hard. If you can't do this, then you don't have to hang around and torture yourself. Go do something else. That's all I'm saying. It's very simple. Or I've even told people who are monks, if they start to have difficulty, I said, you want to give me your robes, put them on a shelf, go do something else for a year or two. Go live an ordinary life doing carpentry or something. And then come back and we'll start this over again if you want to do that. I think that's an option for people if they want to do that. I think it's better to just stay with it no matter what, especially for fully ordained monks. So I'm not sure if I got close to what you're. Can you clarify that question a little bit more so I can maybe respond, and I can go on to maybe one more question, and then we'll vacate the premises.
Ondo bowing. Can receiving everything the teacher or whoever, but teacher in this case, can that ever be too much? Can we cross over into worship, bowing?
As long as you just receive, you don't believe it, just receive, don't disagree with it, just receive. Don't do anything with it. Just receive it. Listen. It's like listening to Mozart. You just listen to it. You just receive it. Just receive. But most of the time, if you're really receiving it, you will not understand it. This gets stronger. The feeling of not understanding, and the reason it gets stronger is the fundamental nature of listening to sound or listening to or receiving anything is empty of a receiving identity and empty of the object that is being received. You are beginning to transcend the relative world of cause and effect, right and wrong, up and down. Karma. This is why the vow to be with all things transcends karma, because that vow goes into emptiness. It does not look for a result. But am I saving all beings or not? No, the vow is save all beings, no matter. Are there any beings? No. How do you know? Find out yourself. So I'll take, there's two people I want to respond to. One of them is Kateri, and the other one is Deb. I'll get to you in a minute, Deb. Kateri, you have a question?
Kateri bowing. On the chronic pain topic, how can I keep my suffering from contaminating my husband's experience?
You can't. I don't think you can. But just be aware that that's what's happening. If you're aware that's what's happening, that is what is happening, rather than try to leverage something, then you're clear enough about the structure of it so that if it does show up an area where you can do it without aggression, where you can do it without manipulation, where you can do it without shutting down, shutting the whole thing down and being controlling in some way, by actually allowing that, being gentle, accommodating with yourself. It's very hard. It just takes a lot of practice. And of course, as you've heard me say since you were 3 years old, meditate. Deb.
Deb bowing. As your student, will I know if I've been given an ultimate teaching? Deb bowing.
You are giving an ultimate teaching right now. So whether you'll know it or not, it's a different kind of knowing than an aha. It won't be an aha. You may not even have an experience to it. It might not be an experience of, for a while I didn't know, but now I know. It's ultimate teaching is is not separate from the relative, but we keep looking for something else. So just most important thing is return. This is why we have a teaching like the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and why we have the teacher saying, return to the wall, sit down, hold still, and watch the movement of the mind. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Shoto, and I am a monk at SokukoJi, where I am committed to training my mind under the guidance of my teacher, Sokuzan. We rely on your support for much of what we offer here. This includes building projects to create space for full-time and part-time practice residents. Thank you for your help.